Anyway, 2 years ago, I was featured on a Los Angeles Public Library show called LA Untangled, and one of my maps, the map of Elysian Heights, was on there, and it says in the corner, Semi-Tropic Spiritualist tract, and then someone said, I want to know more about that. And then I was like, okay, I'll look up and see if I can find anything about it online, because it is such an evocative name, but then I could find very little online, which is the impetus for usually how I write stuff, because if someone else has written about it, then I don't feel the need to, because I tell people, I know it's corny, but I'm kind of a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. I'm not like a professional anything, by training at least. Someone messaged me the other day, and she was like, are you going to talk about why the Semi-Tropic Park is in the wrong place on a map of the Los Angeles Railway from 1938, which I don't have a slide of. And she just reminded me, and I was like, that's why I had the idea that it was in Silver Lake, not Elysian Heights, because it's on that map. And then I had a friend that lived up there in Silver Lake Heights, and I was like, do you know about the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist tract? And he didn't know anything beyond the name, but that it was in Elysian Heights. So then that guy, that's what actually first made me aware of it and curious about it. I was going to talk a little bit about what spiritualism is, because I feel like spiritual is one of those things that, that's the first slide. You can at any point, after a few seconds, we'll just change. I was just going to say, spiritualism, I think it's one of those things that you hear about, you hear it said, and it's like something that people say when you ask, like, oh, what religion are you, or are you religious? And they're like, I'm spiritual. But spiritualism was a bit more formal than that. Spiritualism was a movement, a social movement in religion that began in the 1840s, specifically with two sisters in New York who, in 1848, said that they had contacted the spirit of a murder victim, a murdered peddler who was buried in the basement of their house, which you'd think would be easy enough to just look into. Like, start digging in the cellar. And they said he was murdered by the guy that lived here right before us. And that, I guess it did not do that guy's reputation any good, but he was not ever charged with anything. And the person that they said was murdered was made up. I looked up his name. They said Charles B. Rosna, and then his nickname was Mr. Splitfoot. So I love like these weird, creative, vaguely creepy names. But spiritualism was basically, so there was no foundational text like a Bible or a Tao Te Ching or anything. That was just, there were books that people read and wrote, and there wasn't a spiritual leader like a pope or an imam or anything like that, a Dalai Lama of spiritualism. So it was pretty informal, but it was based on the idea that spirits, after they die, not only stick around, well, they cross over to the afterlife, but that they remain interested in the lives of the living for whatever reason, and then they're available for consultation if you're a medium and you want to contact them with a seance. And then, let's see. Oh, I was going to say, like, so the sisters ended up saying that they admitted that it was a hoax and that they were just like cracking their knuckles and their toes to make the strange rappings that the ghosts communicated with them. But spiritualism didn't die with that. It already had taken off on its own. And I was thinking, like, that's so crazy that people would, they're like, yeah, we made it all up. And people are, no, you just. But then I was like, well, we were supposed to be raptured, what, a week ago, according to TikTok? And then people, I'm sure there are still people waiting for that. And Sir Arthur Conan, Jane Goodall, who just passed, the late great Jane Goodall. I was just listening to an interview with her where she was talking about how she believed in Yetis and Sasquatches, even though she was a scientist and pretty rational. But she was like, I'm also romantic, and it would just, I know there's no bodies anyone's ever found, but it would just be fun if they existed. I think some people just liked it. I also think that some people just, I think it was sort of, I don't know, this is my own theory. I think it was maybe a bit of a cover for your own socially progressive ideas, because whenever they would consult these ghosts, the ghosts are always telling them things like, oh yeah, vegetarianism's a good idea, free love, pacifism, women should have the right to vote, and they're like, wow, these ghosts are really progressive for the time. But at the same time, there were with anything, there were hucksters and there were a lot of accusations of fakery and exploitation because people would be like, pay me some money and I'll contact, one of your deceased loved ones. And yeah, but it was a big religion, according to the New York Times. Although I have to say, I know we live in an era of fake news, but reading old newspaper archives, you're like, there's not a lot of fact checking. It seems like. But the New York Times said that 1 in 10 people in the U.S. was a spiritualist, and at its peak. And if that were true, that would mean more than all the Mormons, all the Buddhists, all the Muslims, all the Jews in the U.S. combined. So that's like almost by twice to me. So that's a really big figure. And then it kind of started to peter out in the 20s and 30s. And it doesn't seem like there's any one definitive reason. I mean, maybe World War I made things, death seem a little less exciting and spooky and fun, but I don't know, or just technology and just faded out. So one of the things that about spiritualism is that the ghosts would communicate in a lot of different ways. One of the ways was that they would spin these tables and it was like sort of a proto Ouija board. It would like move, their hands would move around to a different letter. Then there were Ouija boards. Those were patented by a businessman, Elijah Bond, in 1890. And then someone else, Jonathan Coons, he had spirit trumpets, which he said I guess his son invented, and he would like put a big horn up to his ear, and that would amplify the voices of the spirits so that he could hear them. There was clairvoyance, hypnosis, message reading, where someone would put a note in a envelope and then they would hold it up to their head and answer it without having seen the question. So it's funny because it sounds so much like a night at the Magic Castle or something. But one of the earliest things was these spirit slates that they had for automatic writing, where a ghost would write on a chalkboard and without the aid of human intervention. And I was at the Time Travel Mart across the street, and they have a Victorian iPad. And it's like a piece of chalk with a little chalkboard in a frame. I was like, that's perfect. That's what we need.
Feel free to sit up front there.
But then the main way was with these mysterious rappings. So I thought we would try out to see if we could contact a spirit and say, "Spirit, come communicate with us. Spirit, are you there?" I hear some.
I think it's back here.
Oh, I hear some wooden rapping noises. How strange. Anyway, we'll just move on because we don't want to. Maybe we shouldn't be messing around with that. So one of the most famous adherents of spiritualism was Mary Todd Lincoln. She and Abraham Lincoln had lost one of their children, Willie, when he was 11, and so they tried to contact him. And this is an image I just found the other day after, it wasn't the original one on my blog, but I mean, you can tell it's it's interesting because it is technology, and the mix of that, because obviously it was a spirit photographer who took this picture, but it looks like he painted Abraham Lincoln. His hands are so hard for artists, and look at those weird hands. One of the mediums that they consulted was named Lord Charles J. Colchester, and he supposedly warned Abraham Lincoln that he was in grave danger. But he also was friends with an unhinged actor named John Wilkes Booth, so he might have had an inside track on something. And then another of the famous believers was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who again is one of those people, the guy that, this is a library audience, I don't have to tell you that he wrote Sherlock Holmes, but this is a guy that, believed in rationality and detective work and stuff, and he saw a picture of these fairies in 1920 with these little girls, and he said, these are real. And then the little girls later said, no, we actually just drew those and cut them out and stuck them in the ground with hairpins. And he's like, no, that's not true. They're real. So, again, once you are invested in something, you're really invested in it. Let's see. Oh, and then finally, yeah, we can switch to the next one. Well, the last big person who had a relationship with spiritualism that I wanted to mention was a big skeptic, was Harry Houdini, who went around challenging spiritualists, and but even he kind of left it a little bit open, because he said if he died that he would try to contact his wife through a medium. So for 10 years after his death, she would, in front of paying audiences, try to contact the spirit of Houdini without any luck. So yeah, the picture after this, so this is so on the right, this is kind of like, this is the old Pacific Electric train line going up Glendale Boulevard and then up into the two stub. So on the right, this is around 1904, so this is right before the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists are there, and then on the left is like sort of the Silver Lake Heights area. The Semi-Tropic Spiritualists Association, they kind of made it easier to pronounce, was incorporated on the 2nd of July, 1905. And like I said, the spiritualism was really big, so they were just one of many spiritualist organizations, but probably the best name. There was also the First Spiritualist Mission, the People's Spiritualist Church, and the Society of Spiritual Progression. And then there were sort of spiritualist adjacent groups like the Theosophical Society, which is still around, the Society for Eternal Progression, my favorite, the Be Happy Association, the Mazdaznan Society, speaking of hard to pronounce ones, and the Truth Seeker Society, and the Vedanta Society, and the Church of Humanity. The founding directors of the association were, and this is like an ongoing thing with me, with old-timey newspaper records. Nobody ever wants to use their first name, they always just use their initials. So it becomes really hard to research people. But the founding members were A. Anderson, A. J. Spink, P.A.B. Kennedy, who I think I know who that was. I think it was Philip Andrew Brownlee Kennedy, because I just figured there can't have been that many P.A.B. Kennedys in Los Angeles in 1905. And that P.A.B. Kennedy moved to Los Angeles in 1902, so I'll actually talk a little bit about him later. S.D. Dye, and Nettie Howell, who comes back a few times too. And I know it's interesting too that she got her, like they recorded her whole name, because an even more annoying convention of back then is that a lot of times it's Mrs. and then the husband's name. So I was like, wow, they used her first and last name. The stated purpose of their association was to acquire, operate, and maintain permanent campgrounds in the county of Los Angeles. And the meetings there would be devoted to the maintenance and spreading of the religion of modern spiritualism, its philosophy, and its phenomena. So just there on the hill with the evergreens on the right. And then part of the mission was that they absolutely had to have midnight dances. So I often, like, when people, my shorthand for what are spiritualism, like, it's kind of like Victorian era hippies or ravers. Can you do the next slide? This is one I just added because I was like, one of the things that stands out to me about the name Semi-Tropic Spiritualist is that it's so evocative, and it's like, what's semi-tropical? Because it's not a term people usually use that much anymore. People say subtropical a lot of times, and even this book illustrates, like, yeah, it's semi-tropical. It's got palm. It looks like a banana palm or something, which is not native to here. But you have to figure a lot of these people were making their way out from the Midwest and the East Coast, and we're just like, I don't know, I see palm trees and eucalyptus trees. It feels sort of tropical, but it's not exactly Florida. But let's see. Yeah, that term, semi-tropical, was still in use really until like the 1930s. But yeah, there were all kinds of images that I found of just semi-tropical. Nowadays we usually characterize our climate as semi-arid, but then I was thinking, like, semi-arid spiritualism is not a very appealing name. I wouldn't want to join a group that was like, we're not that dry, but we're pretty dry. And then on 19 September 1905, the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists bought land just north of the city limits. And the city limits, up until, at that point, were Whitmore, if you know where Whitmore is in Silver Lake, or in Echo Park. Yeah, so right, it's where the angle starts. It's like the bottom is more of the Jeffersonian grid, and then the top is actually it shouldn't be a Jeffersonian grid. I don't know. But so it was 1905, and then one of the things, a lot of people here probably know that like Edendale was the original first home of the West Coast film industry, but it's just a little bit before that, because the first permanent studio wasn't built until 1909, which I remember, there's a picture of it there, that Spanish colonial one with the car driving through the arch, the Selleck Polyscope studio. So this is a few years before that. They're on they're outside of town technically, but they're nearby, and they have train access that was going up where the Glendale Freeway is, basically. To the north of them was Elysian Valley, which was then pretty sparsely populated. I don't think they had their big pigeon farm that became a tourist attraction yet. And then to the south of them was another group of like a new religion called the Fellowship of New Thought, and they practiced something they called right thinking, which was a lot of these organizations, it was like a mix of pre-existing things. So right thinking was a mix of Christian Science, Hinduism, and idealism. And if you go up there, there's an unpaved road, the Fellowship Parkway, that's named after their park. So they had neighbors that were also, but they weren't there as long. Although the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists didn't end up being there that long either. Next slide. Let's see this is the real map that Adam found there he is, the Los Angeles County, this is the county assessor, right?
The county clerk's office in Norwalk.
In Norwalk,
That's where they have all the original tract maps.
So you can see this, it's hard to see the detail, but there's so much writing and the original names, and just all those little rectangles are all the lots that are divided up for cabins and tents, and then in that big area in the middle, that's the Semi-Tropic Park, where that was the common area where they had their auditorium and their dances and stuff. Let's see. So the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist tract was recorded in 1906, and their sales agent was a guy named Peter Johnson. He began selling lots on the tract to members, and they initially pitched tents mostly there, and then cottages were constructed later. In the middle is the large Semi-Tropic Park. And one of the first buyers of one of the tracts was Dr. Ada S. Marvin Patterson, and then she comes back later too. She has a little split with the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists. In 1907, I think we can go to the next slide, yeah. So these houses don't look super historic, right? But these are actually, according to the assessor, there are the bones of like 2 cabins inside of these 2 adjacent homes. They, look like they got stuccoed over decades ago. It looks like there's still a lot of ongoing work, but inside of those, there's a couple of extant buildings that date back to then. So yeah, if you look on the county assessor side, it will say like this is built in 1907, and you're like, okay, well, clearly some stuff happened to it since then, but. That same year, the Los Angeles Financier announced that the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists were starting their own bank. And at least, so there's those 2 houses, and then next slide. This one is still, I love that one because it's still very, I don't know if they know about that it was a Semi-Tropic house, but I'm like, I like how spooky it is. They're really leaning into it. That one was built in 1908, I believe. And
what street is that?
That's Rosebud.
That's on Rosebud. Yeah, that's 2007 Rosebud. The other ones were on Alvarado. All right, and then I don't have a slide for this, but there's the next year, it started on, or it ended on shakier ground, is what I meant to say. Because the Los Angeles Times reported that 25 pounds of dynamite were purchased by the Spiritualists to clear tree stumps from their campground, which seems like a bad idea. That, like, all those beautiful trees, like, leave them there. But anyway, I guess the spirits that they consulted weren't, super green. But They bought 25 pounds of dynamite, and because then I looked that up. This is according to Chat GPT or something. That I was like, how much dynamite is that? Because it's obviously not standard, but they said about 50 sticks of dynamite. So that's quite a few, quite a lot of dynamite. I think 16 sticks were used to blow up the LA Times building the year after. So there's a lot of dynamite. The person in charge was of the dynamite was named John Thorne. He'll come back too, and he said that he had safely stored it in a stack of hay. And then supposedly some neighbors didn't think that was that safe, so they actually left. I mean, the newspaper implied that they just left the neighborhood. We're like, I don't want to live by these people. So then the district attorney got involved and said, you have to move it to a safer spot, so he put it under his mattress. Which, I don't know, like, as someone with anxiety, it was like, I have a hard enough time falling asleep at night just thinking about bills and stuff. I can't imagine sleeping on top of 50 sticks of dynamite. I gotta keep these safe. Yeah, just leave the trees. But he had a great quote. He said that the dynamite was no more, quote, harmful than Dutch cheese. Yeah, the weird thing is that I couldn't find any accounts after that of where the dynamite went or if it ever turned up, but I'm not saying it has anything to do with it, but the LA Times building did blow up the year after that. The newspapers had a lot of critical things to say about them, but that's a conspiracy. Next slide. There's their auditorium where the spooks appear. I could not find when it was demolished or anything, but it looks like a nice big barn. By 1908, the common area was usually referred to as Semi-Tropic Park. Johnson was still selling tracts then, but then they sued him for $318, which is a little over $10,000 in today's dollars, and he countersued them for a little bit less, $290. A little under $10,000 over who was in charge of who had the right to what title, the tracts and stuff like that. It was a land dispute, but they did not retain his services after that. And then a month after that, one of the lots was purchased by P.A.B. Kennedy, who was one of the founders of the association, and one that was pretty soon accused of leading them astray. The first disreputable Kennedy. Next slide. Badly wanting a decorum. In May, Los Angeles County, they passed an ordinance requiring spiritualists, clairvoyants, mediums, and palmists to pay a fee of $30 per month, which is over $1,000 in today's money, which seems prohibitively, that's a lot of money for a group of people camping out in the hills. They argue that their group should be exempted because they had installed they'd done some improvements on the area. They added water and plumbing, and they were building the pavilion there. And they also argued that they should be exempted because they were a religion, just like Christianity. And Christians don't have to pay $1,000 a month to practice Christianity. In the opposing team was Hartley Shaw, E.E. Campbell, and Robert T. Hale. And so there's this consortium of anti-spiritualist people, basically. Shaw was the chief deputy district attorney, and he said on behalf of the Board of Supervisors that granting them an exemption would be arbitrary. So that's his argument. Campbell was a member of the California State Spiritualist Association, and he argued that they were not affiliated with real spiritualists and that they were fake mediums and that their practices actually reflected badly on real spiritualists and that they were out to defraud the public. And then the last one, Hale, was a member of both the National Spiritualist Associations and he was the president of the Anti-Fakirs Association. And he alleged that their park was in the auditorium there were a frequent site of disorder, where they regularly just rented it out, their auditorium, to anyone willing to pay, and that young girls were served liquor underage there, and that people would take the train there and exit the train just hooting and hollering. He said he'd been shot at 3 times when visiting the place that he hated so much. And but the spiritualists, they denied all the charges, and the board of supervisors granted the exemption. But that wouldn't be the end of the troubles they would face. Next slide. I ran afoul with the authorities, or the cops. On July 18th, Sheriff John A. Thorne, which is the name, I'm like, that's the dynamite guy's name. John A. Thorne of Edendale entered the Semi-Tropic Hall, but now he's a deputy sheriff. I don't know that it's the same guy, but it seems, how many John A. Thornes would there have been in 1908 in this neck of the woods that are obsessed with the spiritualists? He said that they were becoming boisterous, the crowd, and drinking whiskey, and that he was attacked by 5 male dancers. And then the accounts varied because he wouldn't. I don't think he would give testimony. It seemed like, but he either jumped through a window to escape the dancers, or he was thrown through it. It says, or jumped through, as the story also goes, to escape a murderous attack by a number of rowdies. So talk about getting your story straight, but let's see. I think it was him because of the name and just the uncommonality in his obsession. Oh, and the fact that his injuries were treated by Dr. Ada S. Harmon Patterson, who was one of the founding members. So it seems, if you read between the lines, it seems like there was a split, between the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists by that point. Although I couldn't, no one was ever saying anything about that in the press, but you just have to read between the lines a little bit. And by that time, that doctor that treated his wounds was belonged to this. Which one? She was in the State Spiritualist Association. So one of the people that sued the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists. So it's weird that all these different spiritualists are lurking around this Semi-Tropic park on the night of this rowdy party. Dr. Patterson claimed that the spiritualists had been led astray by P.A.B. Kennedy, who also supervised the dance, and L. Ward, who was the floor manager. And she claimed they would admit anyone for a price of a quarter, including whiskey-drunk hoodlums, who, took the Edendale-Glendale line, and said that they were whooping and yelling and firing revolvers, and also dancing Bowery style, which I had to look up Bowery style because I don't think, it's not a popular dance anymore. And I found this great old video, which I think we should just watch, because it's kind of like the stanky leg, if you know, like Dallas hip hop at all. But they basically they look like they're drunk from the style. So how can you even tell if these people are drunk or not? It's just like a 30-second little video, but. Whoa. I mean, there's the stanky leg, see? So that's what they were dancing up there, the Bowery style, or maybe that's just cover for like, that's what happened. That's why I was like that. All right, so the next we have the Soul Treat. This is from 1909, the Los Angeles Evening Post record, back when there were like so many newspapers. So after that, it seems like they kind of turned a new leaf because some of the people came back into the fold. P.A.B. Kennedy is not mentioned in affiliation with them anymore, but the reason I think he was Philip Andrew Brownlee Kennedy is because someone with that name died in, what was it, like 1911 or right around that time, and he lived in Lincoln Heights, and then his wife, Maud Kennedy, was murdered with chloroform a couple of years after that. So, a guy named, what's his name? Percy Tugwell. What are the best names back then? Back in the park, the lectures and the speakers and the tests and the more cabins were built. New grounds and buildings were dedicated with splendid speakers and mediums featuring, with names we don't probably remember. But one of the people that built one of the new cabins then was Thomas C. Saunders, who built the house at 2008 Elmoran Street, which we now know as the Paul Landacre cabin, which is still up there, and which I guess the last presentation was about. And I have some pictures of it. When I went up there, it was, I thought for sure they were just, whoever owned it was just letting it rot away and fall into oblivion, but I guess it's fully restored and well done now. But there was a big announcement made that they were going to have a 30 days soul treat. I think treat is just like short for a retreat, or just a hip way of saying that in 1908. But I was like, 30 days is a really long time. Like Burning Man is a week. You're gonna have a 30-day soul treat? The admission would be 10 cents. And if you want to get a seance, 15. It featured live music and speakers, including the president of the National Spiritualist Association. So it seems like they, smooth things over a bit. A message reader, John D. Slater, who was nicknamed the Millionaire Medium. We can go to the next slide so you can take in John D. Slater. There he is, the Millionaire Medium. A socialist, Mary C. Vlasic of the Progressive Society of Spiritualist Truth Seekers, and others. You definitely start getting more socialists involved, which I think for some people were scarier than the spirits, and that might have also led to their downfall. But whenever spiritualism was mentioned in the Los Angeles Herald in particular, I mentioned that there were so many newspapers back then. They were always so snarky, and like it's hard to know if it's just not even an opinion piece, but it just seems like they're joking. So the writer from the Los Angeles Times went up there, Los Angeles Herald went up there, and he said that there was some rapping in the back of the room, but it turned out to be men playing cribbage. Which I really, just during the seance, they're just back there playing cribbage. And then he also said that Slater was downcast because there were so few spooks were in attendance, but that he could be heard muttering that he didn't care because attendees had already paid their admission fee. Which I just think, I can't imagine someone saying that in a stage whisper that everyone can hear. Oh, he just said he doesn't care. He's got his money, and that's all he cares about. Wow. And then finally, he said that he said that Slater said that he could predict anyone's place of birth, nationality, age, name, or color of socks, but didn't provide any evidence of him being able to do it or not. And then said that he said there was a ghost in the back of the room behind a woman with a double chin named E.S. Jones. Which again, I was like, even the ghosts are going by their initials. Like, just give us a full name so we can look these people up. Everyone jumped, the writer noted. No one jumped, okay. So that was the same day that they got raided. So next slide. I tried to clean these pictures up a little bit because they're so murky. They're all obviously taken from old newspapers, but you can kind of see there's, straw boater, cop, and some women being dragged away, and maybe a sheriff's deputy on the left. On the 19th of June, the district attorney's office raided the camp. Medium Belle Howerton, John Slater, Professor Norris, Natty Howell, psychic Mrs. Stanford Johnson, and Mother Mary E. Weeks Wright were all charged with practicing spiritualism without a license. They're getting dragged in. Weeks Wright was 81 years old, and she claimed to be the oldest medium alive, and had apparently, this is the callback, she had been one of the mediums at Abraham Lincoln's seances. She was not made to appear in court, but Nettie Howell was, and I guess she was a kind of becoming kind of a big figure, because I found out too that in addition to managing the Semi-Tropic Park, she also owned a couple of auditoriums, the Burbank and Howell Halls. And by 1909, she was the treasurer of the State Spiritualist Association. But all the charges against them were dismissed. And meanwhile, the retreat continued, and a November meeting featured Dr. Ada Harmon Patterson again, the one that treated John Thorne's wounds after he jumped through a window or got thrown through it. So it seems like they were all, all was forgiven. And then next slide. Oh, there's Nettie Howell, and I'm like, what? I don't know. I'm like, couldn't you have found a slightly more flattering picture? But what ultimately seems to have done the semi-tropics in was not like the harassment of the police and the anti-fakirs, but just the fact that that part of the city got annexed by Los Angeles. So their park was annexed on the 28th of February 1910. They lobbied to have, they stayed there for a minute because they lobbied to have the city pave one of the roads up there, probably Alessandro. I'm just guessing, because there's still, I don't know, anyone that knows Elysian Heights knows that there's still a surprising amount of like just dirt roads up there. And they had they had a picnic that month. I just like all the details that it mentions. A picnic with coffee, lemonade, conferences, speeches, music, lectures, and a good time generally. Next slide. John Slater's a millionaire medium again. They continued to host events at the Semi-Tropic Park, but they were usually not affiliated with the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists by that point. That November, the Spiritualists, Socialists, and quote liberal thinkers had a free event up there where they heard a revelation. I had to just write it down with them. What does this mean? The future economic revelation communicated through a revelation called O-Hope, but it's O-A-H-O-P-E, which I don't know if that's a spirit or that's just the name of the revelation about future economies. But at the same time, the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists, they were still around, but just not, you don't see them mentioned under that name as much anymore. Nettie Howell and Ada Patterson were still practicing spiritualism. John Slater appeared in Long Beach. And a lot of them seem to have decamped to Mineral Park in South Pasadena. Maybe next slide. Again, it's kind of a group of mediums at Mineral Park. So yeah, they went over there. That's an area between where the ostrich farm was and the Arroyo Seco. And, they held court for a while, it seems like. And Howell, by that time, had become the chairman of the People's Spiritualist Church, so she was still around too, Nettie Howell. Next slide. And I don't know if you can see, there are little swastikas up there, which I think a lot of people probably know, but before Hitler came along and the Nazis, those were just kind of charms, that were thought of like a that's what appealed to the Nazis about them too, but they just kind of ruined the swastika. But there's Weeks Wright. She's over 81 by that point. So even though they were gone, the park still continued to host more events. And then, one of the final, the case of Semi-Tropic Spiritualist Association versus Peter Johnson, the guy that sold the tracts, that was settled in their favor in 1912. That was one of the final mentions I could find of them. At the same time, 1912 was when an ordinance was filed, and Adam found this information too, where that was when they renamed a lot of the streets. So Magnolia became Modjeska, Violet became Peru, Evergreen became Elmore, and then Elmoran, probably because there were already streets, with those names in other parts of Los Angeles, so they had to rename it. So usually they kind of do something similar, like Evergreen becomes Elmore, Magnolia, Modjeska. There's definitely another Magnolia in Los Angeles already. The Semi-Tropic Spiritualist Church, the People's Spiritualist Church was hosted at the park. The Grace English Lutheran Church and the Spiritualist Relief Association. And then supposedly 1,000 people turned up for that, and then 1,200 people showed up for a socialist convention. But my favorite event that happened in this period where they're kind of winding down is that they had a Newsies ball. You know, the little kids that sell newspapers, and it was just for newsboys and their best girls, and it featured all the most famous Newsies. I didn't know that Newsies were like celebrities that people recognize, but apparently they were, because it gave their names, and their names are great: Eggs, Toddy, Waddy, Skeets, Jockey Page, Slats Lee, and Cockeyed Pat. Cockeyed Pat. But it did say there was dance. Bush's Ragtime Band provided the music, and there was dancing to the Bunny Hug and the Texas Tommy, but no mention of the Bowery dancing. So it was all above ground, all above board. And then there was the Orthodox Jewish congregation met at the park in 1914 and 1917. Now that, you know, Edendale's underway as the movie capital, they had an audition for 500 girls at the park to, you know, find work at the West Coast, Edendale's West Coast studio. And the last mention I could find of the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist Association was a filing then of non-ownership of the park. So they seem to have pretty much gone away, like 1917, 1918. And then it was pretty much just socialists from there on out, and you know, they had dancing, sports, and refreshments that it mentioned. Next slide. This is I'm not 100% sure on this, but well, this is definitely the Semi-Tropic tract in the background. But Edendale and SP station, I'm assuming it's the Semi-Tropic Park station.
Southern Pacific.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah.
Edendale and Southern Pacific. But it's a Pacific Electric train.
But it would probably run to the station for the connection.
Maybe, yeah. But there is a stop. I'll show you well, actually we can go to the map if you want the next slide. So there is this very cool kind of mystical map. Where is it? Oh, see, it does have a stop there, Semi-Tropic Park, on the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
You see the Edendale Semi-Tropic Park?
Right.
So, let's see. There are occasional mentions of the former spiritualists into the 30s that I could find, because, you know, they're starting to get older and pass away. Mary E. Weeks Wright's 91st birthday was covered in the newspapers in 1920. The last mention I could find from the park was from 1928, when it still appeared in some of the home listings. But it seems like it was mostly abandoned around that time. Nettie Howell died in 1935, so did John Slater, and the Pacific Electric stopped running that train in 1940. Two freeways started in 1950, and I'll just say, because I know Adam likes this line, that it became less Edenic after they built the freeway there. So people basically stopped saying Edendale for, you know, a while. Although Daniel just showed me where the old Edendale library was, because I was like, why is this one called Edendale when it's kind of far from, you know, it's just under when you just pass the tube.
Eric, do you know when that photo is from, of the streetcar, the one before this?
I don't know. They have a picture of that at the bar at Edendale, but you know, a lot of it's hard to tell from like the kids' style, but
Yeah, it's great though.
I would guess before 1910.
Yeah, I think, yeah. It's up, but it's hard to say. And then, so the bit about Paul Landacre, who they had the last one about, he bought one of the cabins in 1932, and it was, this is just a note about online research, because one of the only things I found out about the Semi-Tropic Park was in a blog, and it said that Paul Landacre was a card-carrying member of the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist Association, but then I was like, wait, he would have been 8 years old, I think, when in Ohio, so I don't know. Do your own research. There's also, on Wikipedia, it says that this is perched atop a impossibly steep and winding street that I rode my bike up. I was like, maybe it's not as steep as it used to be. But But yeah, if you see there, it's pretty run down. But then the next slide, you wanna. That was I was too scared. I mean, okay, I don't believe in ghosts, but I am scared of them. But I just leaned in there because I was scared of falling through the floor. Although some Heineken fans clearly were willing to brave both ghosts and collapsing floors. It was really, it's sad though, because if people don't know Paul Landaker's story, his wife died of cancer, and then he was distraught and turned on the gas in his oven, and the gas ignited, and then he died after being in the hospital with having his burns treated for 2 weeks, I think. But that when I peeked in there, and I don't know, I guess they found even more stuff about Paul Landaker, like when they were restoring it, but you could still see the oven there, and I was like,
Is that Fellowship Parkway?
I think that you're maybe thinking of the Hartwell Hamilton Harris house.
It's on El Moran.
Hamilton Hartwell Harris, yeah. This is what's the address? It's El Moran is the unpaved one.
El Moran, is
right?
the crumbling little street that they're
Yeah.
referring to, but you're right, it's not steep. But it only has a handful of addresses on it. And so I literally think that's the only El Moran address, aside from a couple down at the bottom of the hill on Alessandro.
Let's see, and then so the park. This is kind of the latter days of the park. The park was, like I said, I think it was pretty abandoned for a long time. I know there was a development in the 1970s that was planned that didn't go anywhere. And then in the 90s, I think that's when it was fenced off, because I moved out here in 99, and I think it had a chain link fence around it by then. And then in 2007, then City Council member Eric Garcetti hosted a big meeting that said they were going to have this exciting new development called the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist tract garden lots. And then right after the meeting, the developer started chopping down all the protected walnuts, eucalyptus, oaks, queen palms, stone palms, and other trees. And then there was a court challenge from someone in the neighborhood, Cindy Ortiz. But in 2009, but the City Council's Planning and Land Use Management Committee denied her appeal. And finally, another developer, Planet Home Living, came in. Planet Home Living, and then they wanted to call it Echo Park 15 at Alessandro, which in 2011, which is just a reminder, because I can't say names like that without mentioning how much I hate the whole this at that naming thing. And I was like trying to think of my least favorites: the Point at El Segundo, the Lot at DTLA, the Americana at Brand, at Edendale, at Los Angeles County, at anyway. They partnered with Van Dale Development, and in 2012, 15 home development was completed with the name Via Artis, which I'm not very good at Latin, but I think that means art road, or I think that was the intention. And I think, but one thing I will say, well, I have a friend that lives in that development. I don't know how much she knows about the history of the neighborhood or even cares, but I do think that it kind of reawakened interest in all this stuff about all the development and all the challenges, because it was around then that there was a husband and wife team, and I'm going to murder these names, Astrid Svensrud and Quinn Gomez Heitzeberg. They started doing performance art as the Semi-Tropic Spiritualists. And I saw they gave a presentation at a Philosophical Research Society recently, but I wasn't able to make it. And in 2018, they published a book called the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist Guidebook. And then in 2015, Daniel W. Finley and Aaron Magri opened the cafe/bar, the Semi-Tropic, which is one of their friends tried to commission me to do a map showing where it was in the tract, and I was like, well, it's not. It's in the Pacific Electric tract. But they also only want to pay me $100, and I said, you need to get a few more friends together and chip in. And nothing's worth only $100. But yeah, they're definitely going for that and not just referencing the climate, because the bar's intended vibe is forest seance. So that's pretty much it. Let's see. I went. So the time I went over there, I remember I was, like I said, I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm scared of them. So I did ride my bike in indirect way home, as I was advised, because they say it's harder for ghosts to follow if you do that. But there's been a little bit of automatic writing, it appears. It says, "Thank you, everyone from E.S. Jones." Thanks, everyone. Any questions? Yeah.
So, the original founders of this tract pretty much passed from the scene and relinquished their interest, both formally and informally, by the end of the 20s, is what I recall.
Yeah, it seems that way.
1927, they were kind of...
I couldn't find any mention of anything after the 20s, yeah.
So how did it pass from that period, the late 20s, to people like Paul Landacre and Harwell Hamilton Harris in the 30s?
It's a good question. Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to know, because I could, they relinquished ownership. They filed like a petition of non-ownership, but yeah, there's still.
I mean, usually the county will take it back if the taxes aren't paid. Or,
right.
People can initiate a quiet title action and go to court.
It sounds like Adam's territory.
Actually, I was going to defer to Damien Gatto. Yeah. Damien, didn't you find some information on something that was on the Semi-Tropic Park area research or something like that between Semi-Tropic and like the 60s? No? Oh, my bad.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find anything. It's surprisingly hard, but yes.
Who did they buy it from?
I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Like,
yeah.
Who owns land?
It was Rancho Los Feliz before it got annexed. So, I know that some of Rancho Los Feliz was owned by Griffith J. Griffith. Some stayed in the Los Feliz family. It's a good question. Yes.
Was the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist tract incorporated like an Odd Fellows fraternal order, or anything like quasi-non-profit that we would understand now?
Well, I don't know. It didn't seem that way to me, just because they still tried to make them pay money for. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that much about the law side of stuff.
Because at the same time as this was going on, Odd Fellows around California were buying property and cabins in rural areas and setting up little retreat things that were safe and from any kind of, and the only way that they could be passed on or sold is to another relative by inheritance. They have really interesting legal.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
If that applied.
Yeah, look more into maybe we can make a trip to the county records and try to get to the bottom of who owned the property and what the nature of their organization was legally.
Did you draw this map?
I did, yeah. Oh, thank you. That's watercolor and oil paint. And originally, actually, this is like the uncorrected version, which it's like one of those upside down stamps that's worth more. Because I put the Landacre cabin on the wrong side of the street, so then I had to paint over that and then put it on the other side. But I wanted to leave it that way online, so if anyone steals it, I know they didn't buy a print from me. It's a copyright protection.
So I wonder, could you say a little bit about the fellowship tract and the relationship between the two?
The fellowship tract seems to have been there really for a short period. I think the guy that ran it, became an Episcopalian or something.
Benjamin Fay Mills.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You know anything else about the...
A little bit, yeah. He was another progressive preacher. He had, I found a newspaper article that had one of his sermons that was called Overcoming Sin by Not Resisting It. Because you come up with a better slogan for LA. but yeah, I think you're right. It was about the same time. I think the Fellowship Park tract was 1905, 1906.
They were just
and they were
before,
only there for a few years and gone.
Yeah,
by 07, 08, something like that. He was in Chicago.
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
I thought that guy was an architect or something.
I don't think so.
I don't know about that.
Hamilton Harwell. I'm getting the order of his name wrong, but
Harwell Hamilton Harris
Yes.
was a very well-known
Yes.
architect, and that little house that's so mentioned is still there. It's
Yes.
pretty rough shape.
I can't figure out how to get to it when I've gotten up there. I've walked around, and then I'm like, I know it's like over here.
You know where the water tower is?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Landa Street.
Yeah.
And even though there's gates,
Yeah, I've been down that. I've
you
been
go-
down that
okay,
path.
So you go halfway down.
And then it's off
there's
to the
a little
left.
path that veers off to the left.
That's what I've heard, and I just
And you
it's so
follow
hard
that
to.
path all the way
Yeah.
down, and there's almost to where it hits Lakeshore is where the Harwell Hammer.
Yeah, it's on your right as you go
It's in
down.
bad shape though. No one's living there now.
Yeah, but there's a lot of great pictures from that Dappridge took that appeared in California Arts and Architecture soon after. So you can find images of what it looked like.
I've done deliveries up there at night when it's like so hard. When you're walking down that path and you pass through all these little gates and you're like, you feel like you're
It's
trespassing.
kind of, well, but you're not.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's easement for,
Right.
there's sewer line down there, there's electrical line, and that whole thing is public
Yeah.
property.
It's Fellowship Parkway.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
connects
yeah.
and goes through to Lakeshore.
Yeah.
Are the black dots around the Semi-Tropic Park representing cabins?
But that's just me representing the size of a trail instead of a paved road. Yeah.
And
So,
were the cabins also on this side of Whitmore?
do you wanna? No, they were just north of Whitmore, right? I think all of them were north of Whitmore. Yeah, because that would have been.
North of Whitmore, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Whitmore was the original northern boundary of the
Right.
city. So, and you can see on the bottom of this map here, those two staircases, Landa and Peru, those lead up from Whitmore to the Semi-Tropic Spiritualist tract.
Yeah,
And-
maybe if you want to go back to the original track map, you can kind of see all the. Sometimes they'll show the ones that are already built on a map like that. But it might. Just,
we zoom in?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to see.
No,
Yeah.
you can see it on that computer,
Yeah,
the projector.
but all of those little squares are, lots for the cabins and
So they
pens.
were on the north side of Whitmore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, one weird fact I thought was that Walcott Way, what is today Walcott Way, was just an alley on the original tract. It didn't become a street called Walcott Way until 1921, which is also about the same time those two staircases, Peru and
Yeah.
Landa, were built up to there. So
It seems like it was like the last one of the big name changes, I think.
I'll take it away.
Yes.
I was wondering,
Oh,
did
yeah.
you see anything in any of the newspaper stories about whether or not they also indulged in mentalism? 'Cause
I didn't see anything about mentalism. No.
The other end of Echo
Yeah.
Park, next to the lake, in the very early teens, there was the Victor Segno School of Success. And what they loved to do was this thing, what they promoted was mentalism, that if everyone, everywhere, thinks about wanting the same thing, they can achieve it. I probably butchered the idea.
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
feels like it's a second cousin to spiritualism
Yeah.
in a way.
I mean, there were so
For sure.
many, I'm sure someone else has already described Los Angeles as the cult capital, but like, there's just so many, it's like if you have a theory or an idea, like come out here and get some followers.
They actually sold pamphlets.
Yeah.
They say like, how to be happy though married.
Yeah, originally I think Daniel's idea was originally to have this be more about like more religious movements, but we thought there's like for an hour this is a lot. I didn't want to get into every single person's name that was named in there either, but it's just so many last names to remember and so many initials. Maybe over here.
Do we know where the auditorium is located?
In the park, I believe, like in the middle of the common area. So that big blank area on the tract map is the Semi-Tropic Park. So all the cabins are sort of oriented around that.
So behind the Ortiz?
Yeah, up and over. I think a little to the like there. Well, that's So down below the Landacre cabin probably, but who else? Yes.
I'll share a couple of little tidbits that I know of about this little area. I've sold at least one house up there. I believe it was on Walcott Way. It might have gone on a lot between Walcott and Altivo that has no foundation. It is built, it's called a mud sill. It's built on the dirt. So
Yeah.
it must be from this era.
Yeah.
Is my suspicion. It was a little difficult to get a loan on that too. And then there, right around the corner from that, there are gardens up there that have chunks of what I believe to be the old red sandstone LA County courthouse that was torn
Oh,
down.
wow.
And people could just take those chunks of red sandstone and put them in their garden. They're up there.
Yeah.
What street is this on? Sorry.
With the chunks of red sandstone?
Yeah.
It would be like, is it like
That's on
Walcott Way and then Altivo Way? I think it's is Altivo has a cul-de-sac at the end?
Yeah, Altivo Way is
It's
southeast.
It's a
At the-
cul-de-sac. It's at the
Yeah,
end of the
yeah, yeah. The
cul-de-sac.
alley where it runs out.
Where it dead ends.
Yeah.
It's right near where Jackie Goldberg lives.
Mm.
Okay.
So anyway, not that she had anything to do with it. The other thing is the Landacre house supposedly had a printing press because he was a printmaker,
Mhm.
and that came from Bodie, Ghost Town.
Mhm.
He went up there and got it somehow. And how he ever schlepped it down here to LA, I have
Yeah.
no idea back then.
And then up an impossibly steep.
And then speaking of reusing things, the Harwell Hamilton Harris house,
Mhm.
he built with second-hand, if you will, parts, windows in particular, that he took from his first commission, which I believe was for a woman in Altadena. She changed her mind. They had to redo the windows, and they were perfectly good brand new windows. So he took them and made his house out of those windows, and that's the house on Fellowship Parkway. Unless it's changed.
Yeah.
I was curious in your research for all this, if you found any crossover with the Theosophy Society?
Not really. I didn't. I mean, not to say that there wasn't any, but you know, a lot of it's like most of what I found was just newspaper archives, and it just not something that was covered in newspapers. But yeah, in the back, first maybe.
The house where the stove
Yeah.
has been, is that still sketchy?
Yeah, but it's been restored, I guess, and really well done. Yeah.
They don't use the word restore.
No.
They had to get, I heard it here.
Oh, okay.
To do restoration, there's all this stuff they had to do, so it's been,
Renovated?
refreshed.
Refresh. Zhuzhed up.
Yeah, just sold for $1.2 million.
So yeah, seems like a lot of work probably went into it then, 'cause, yeah. Yes.
Modjeska Street?
Yeah.
Had a different name on one of your maps.
Yeah.
Magnolia.
Yeah, it was one of the ones that was renamed when it got annexed by
Is there
the
a
city.
significance to that name? 'Cause-
Well, Modjeska was an opera singer, I think, who had a place down in Orange County. You know about Modjeska?
An actress.
Hmm?
She was an actress
An actress.
of the time, yeah.
Yeah,
Sound
ranch
from?
down there. She
Yeah.
wrote a book about
Maybe.
Theater.
So it was like a name that people were probably familiar with, and they were like, start with an M, let's not change it too much.
Was she a
Magnolia's
spiritualist?
already
Was she a
taken.
spiritualist?
No, I don't think
I think
so.
she's a famous theater actress,
Yeah.
mostly.
And sometimes you see that a lot with like street names being renamed, where it's just once an area gets annexed, if it's like, oh, this is First Street and there's already First Street, it's like we'll call it First Street now or something, you know. So
It is a Polish name, and there was a Polish community in Cypress Park for many generations. It could have just been a Polish name. Yeah.
sure.
Hi, I just thought it would be interesting for people to know, because we're in a library now,
Yeah.
that the topic of spiritualists is now current fodder for contemporary writers to write genre fiction.
Mm.
And if you poke around and look around, you'll be seeing a lot of titles and references back to it, such as, you may remember Silver Nitrate, Sylvia Morales Garcia, set in Mexico City, but with characters that came from Los Angeles, who are members of the Spiritist community here in Los Angeles, one of whom was, remember Jack Parsons, the architect engineer guy? His second wife was active in the Spiritist community.
Is that
here.
Cameron or?
The actress, the second wife that was an actress. Anyway, what she did, what the author did, was she did the research about real characters and populated it. But that's not the only one.
Yeah. Wait, is she the author of Mexican Gothic too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, I
same
read that,
author.
yeah.
I just finished a book a couple weeks ago, a terrible book, but set in Laguna Beach with the Spiritist community there. You know, and that was a horror thriller.
Mhm.
And I have a friend that's writing a book set in Valley Village with another Spiritist community. So
Okay.
this is happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think
Okay.
it's just meaningful that we're here in the library
Yeah.
talking about it.
Love the library.
Maybe I'd like to share a tip for restoring old photos.
Yeah.
Recent updates to Google Gemini have made it just amazing, phenomenal.
Okay.
One prompt and perfect.
My desktop just died like a week ago, so I won't be able to do anything for a minute, but okay. Google Gemini.
It works on your phone.
Okay. So you have a phone that works still,
Yeah.
for the time being. Yes.
Also, spiritualism is alive in Brazil currently.
Mm.
Although named Spiritismo.
Okay. Sounds better in Portuguese.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up? Or?
Yeah. Thanks so much, Eric. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
Be sure to visit his website where you can see and purchase maps and things
This
like
is
that.
ericbrightwell.com.
Follow him. Here's a little, you can write your email address on here if I don't already have it. If you want to come to future events like this at the library, I'll put you on our mailing list.
Are you recording?
I brought a couple of other maps if you want to look at.